Very nice. Another song Pete learned at Camp Woodland and made famous was Guantanamera. Again, I wasn't there, but in 1962, the last summer that the camp was open, there was a young counselor by the name of Hector Angulo, Cuban counselor. And one day Pete was at the camp, and this actually, there's a tape of this that is available from the Library of Congress archives. Kids saying, "Oh, Pete, you got to hear this song that this counselor of ours brought to the camp." And you can hear Hector Angulo singing the song and Pete listening and starting to play along on his banjo and starting to harmonize and then saying, "That's a beautiful song. Can you tell us what the words mean? I'd like to learn that song." So let's again do just one verse and chorus. Sorry, I can't do all of every one of these songs. Guantanamera, Guajira, Guantanamera, Guantanamera, Guajira, Guantanamera. Yo soy un hombre sincero, de donde crecen las palmas. Yo soy un hombre sincero, de donde crece la palma, y antes de morir me quiero echar mis versos del alma. Guantanamera, Guajira, Guantanamera, Guantanamera, Guajira, Guantanamera. You're wonderful singers. So lesson 4, get everyone to participate. Just as an example, Pete showed up at the Peace Vigil with copies of God's Counting on Me. I've got to show you this. On one side, handwritten the verses. On the other side, handwritten the music. And with the chords and everything. And he had a bunch of copies. He gave them out to everybody at the vigil because he wanted to make sure that everybody participated. And needless to say, I'm sure we all kept our copies. And I think that's going to be the only example I'm going to give of that because I'm running out of time here and I'm only on lesson 4. Lesson 5, be a role model. How many of you have seen Pete picking up garbage? Some of you have. If you went to the Clearwater Revival or any of the Beacon Sloop Club events, which by the way I highly recommend, yeah, Pete would be walking around picking up garbage. And in fact, there was one time when I was there and he was looking at the poison ivy and said, "Oh, I was going to pull up this poison ivy and I forgot." And he was really concerned about that because he was concerned that other people would get poison ivy. And I said, "Well, Pete, how do you keep from getting poison ivy if you pull it up?" And he said, "Oh, I wear gloves." So coming to the vigil, there was one time when it was a real snowy day and I said, "Well, nobody's going to be at the Peace Vigil today. So it's safe for me to go to the mall between the hours of 12 and 2. Nobody will be at the Peace Vigil watching me, drive up to the mall." Well, there was Pete, standing there in a foot or two of snow, 90 years old, and here I am going to the mall. Lesson 6, listen to other people's point of view. Pete said it's a very important thing to learn to talk to people you disagree with. When, after a year or so of this Peace Vigil, you may have noticed if you drove by there on a Saturday, as I tried to avoid doing, on the other side of the street, there was a bunch of counter-demonstrators. Well, Pete would walk across Route 9, taking his life in his hands just by doing that, and just talk to them. He just, went over, talked to them, invited them to come over and sing "This Land Is Your Land" with us. One guy once said he would, but then he didn't. When they made the movie The Power of Song, anybody see that movie, The Power of Song? It's on Channel 13 from time to time when they have their fund drive. Highly recommend it. He said that it was okay for them to make that movie as long as they had somebody in there who disagreed with him. So they did. They invited this fellow, Ron Radosh, who also went to Camp Woodland, had left-wing parents, but at some point became ultra right-wing, really offensively so. And so he was in there talking about Pete, but he didn't say a bad word about Pete. So it kind of was not what Pete had in mind. Okay, lesson 7 is communicate with people. He would He called me from time to time. He called people all the time. Every letter that he got, he would answer. Very often what he would do to save paper, he would take that letter and he would write his answer on the back and send it back to the person. Or he would write a postcard if it was a short message, again, to save paper. But after a while, especially after that movie, The Power of Song, came out, he got so much mail that it was really hard. So he started sending Xerox copies. And real briefly, this is what it says. Until the last few years, when that good movie, The Power of Song, came out, my lefty reputation kept me out of the spotlight. But now I've blown my cover. The mail comes in by the bushel. The phone rings every 5 minutes. I have to say no to all sorts of good people. Now this form letter is sent to you. I apologize. But I urge you, stay well, keep involved, don't give up. The agricultural revolution took thousands of years. The industrial revolution took hundreds of years. The information revolution is only taking decades. If we use it and use the brains God gave us, who knows what miracles may take place? Some of them already have. And he says a little more, but I'll just cut it off. But he signs it with his signature banjo. And then he would write little notes, additional notes at the top, personal notes to whoever it was who wrote him the letter. But this form letter was sent to everybody who wrote him a letter, even after the mail was coming in by the bushel. So, communication. Okay, lesson 8, give credit where credit is due. For example, with Where Have All the Flowers Gone, he shared his royalties with Joe Hickerson. On Wimoweh, when he found out that Wimoweh was not a folk song from South Africa, it was actually written by a man named Solomon Linda, who had passed away by the time Pete found out about this, but he shared his royalties with the family of Solomon Linda. Lesson 9, encourage and challenge those around you. I wrote a song called Peace Pilgrim that he heard when we sang around the peace pole. He loved it, but he sent me a copy back to me with a few little changes in red. And here. Now, I am far from the only person who had that happen to them. I personally know a lot of people who did, and I once heard Judy Collins interviewed on the radio saying, once Pete Seeger sent me back one of my songs with a critique, and I thought I could just die and go to heaven right then. And so my thought was, well, I can die and go to heaven too. Okay, another story. His friend Spook Handy, the wonderful folk singer from New Jersey, once said to him, Pete, you have this song called Quite Early Morning, where there's a line that goes, when these fingers can strum no longer, hand the old banjo to young ones stronger? And Pete said, yeah. Well, Pete, would it be okay if I said guitar instead of banjo, since I don't play banjo? And Pete looked at him and said, why don't you learn to play banjo? So, I can never sing this song anymore on the guitar. When Spook said that, I said to myself, why don't I learn to play banjo? So I haven't really learned, but I learned well enough to do a little bit. And of course, I still can't learn to keep the banjo in tune, but that's just because it's a banjo. So give me a moment. Not that you'll know the difference whether it's in tune or not. And again, if you know it, sing along, and if you don't know it, the last line of every verse is repeated, so at least you can come in on that one. It's always darkest before the dawn, but this thought keeps me moving on. If we can heed these early warnings, the time is now, quite early. If we could heed these early warnings, the time is now, quite early morning. So we keep on while we live, until we have no more to give. And when these fingers can strum no longer, the old banjo Spook says that when he first met Pete, he went up to him and said, "Hi, my name is Spook Candy," and he expected something like, "Nice to meet you," or "My name is Pete Seeger." Instead, he got, "Do you know what founder's disease is?" "No, Pete, what's founder's disease?" "It's when you start an organization and 30 years later, you're still running it." He absolutely did not want that. He wanted other people to take over for him. Another example, that when the walkway was built, the walkway over the Hudson in Poughkeepsie, which I hope you've all been on, it's great. They wanted to name it after Pete. He said no, wouldn't let that happen. So here's another example of this, and it's our closing hymn, so if you'd like to stand, it's not in the hymnal, but the chorus is ridiculously easy, so you can join me on the chorus. Stand up.
Each week we make an offering from the bounty we are blessed to enjoy. We do this in a spirit of love and generosity, aware that we have benefited from those who have gone before, those who in their turn gave generously. Our offering goes to support the work of love and justice undertaken by this community. Today's offering will also be shared with the NAACP of Peekskill to support the Civic Engagement Committee. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
One blue sky above us, one ocean lapping all our shores, one earth so green and brown, who could ask for more? And because I love you, I'll give it one more try, to show my rainbow race it's too soon to die. Some folks want to live like an ostrich, bury their heads in the sand. Some think that plastic dreams can unclench all those greedy hands. Some want to take the easy way, poisons bombs, they think we need them. Don't you know you can't kill all the unbelievers? There's no shortcut to freedom. One blue sky above us, one ocean lapping all our shores, one earth so green and round, who could ask for more? And because I love you, I'll give it one more try, to show my rainbow race it's too soon to die.
Please join me in the dedication of the offering, which can be found in your order of service. May these gifts and the work of our hands and hearts give power to all we stand for as a community of faith.
The benediction is, there's no such thing as a wrong note, just as long as you're singing along. And the postlude is To My Old Brown Earth by Pete. To my old brown earth and to my old blue sky, I'll now give these last few molecules of I. And you who sing, and you who stand nearby, I do charge you not to cry. Guard well our human chain, watch well you keep it strong, as long as sun will shine, and this our home keep pure and sweet and green, for now I'm yours, and you are also mine.
Thank you very much for being here, Pat. I should have said this earlier. It is my great joy that she's here with us today. I'm going to start crying. She's my lifelong friend. She's known me since before I was born. And thank you all for being here. Please join us in the coffee hour.